qualified, certified users who may not be able to make transfers en route. I know that on the south end, there's one group of users that are Alzheimer's patients, and the paratransit system was very essential to their going and coming to services that they were receiving as Alzheimer's victims of Alzheimer's disease. I can imagine that if one is confined to various motorized and unmotorized wheelchairs, that sometimes the transfer process would impact the schedule of the main line that they're transferring onto and off of 4 times. I mean, going, getting on the main line, getting off the main line, coming back, getting on the main line, getting off the main line. That could be make it very difficult, for example, for the Long Island runs that are timed by the ferry, where they have to be there on a half-hour schedule if possible, or an hour schedule, two different buses. So those are considerations that are accommodated in the current system, and certainly I'm not opposed to finding ways to group pair of rider qualified customers and people with different disabilities, but the physical training that the pair drivers have for handling people with a variety of disabilities, I guess, would include, in some cases, perhaps psychological or mental disabilities that would make it very difficult for them to be part of a regular transfer system. This is not counting people that are receiving dialysis and perhaps physically could not be transferred back and forth.
And let me add here that that does get taken into consideration during the initial assessment. I can indicate that they cannot utilize the fixed route, or I indicate that they are okay for route deviation. So we do consider that, and we won't put someone on the fixed route to transfer to come up if it's not appropriate for us to do that. And to the comment of this gentleman about doing it, it's more efficient to do that. We are already doing that, putting paradriders on the fixed route to go north or south. But I can comment too that if a pararider calls to get their pickup time the night before and find out that they've been put on the fixed route, they will oftentimes cancel their trip because they don't want to run the fixed route.
Thank you. Jill?
I'm supportive of the sooner review of the eligibility. I think that if we have new criteria, we should just put everyone through it and see how that kind of comes out. On the out-of-bound piece, again, I don't know all of the rules, but my first inclination is that you pay the full rate to go out of bounds. If those miles aren't subsidized, then the person receiving that additional service may need to pay for those miles. Also, I know when you were talking about incentivizing people with free rides, that it was the assumption that there would be no free rides anywhere. So I did understand that, but possibly a cancellation or a no-show that may, and again, not knowing the rules, that you could maybe bill somebody out for the full cost of that. See, I should make rules.
You can't bill for a trip not taken.
Yeah. All right, we need to think creatively on how to redefine that no-show language. And then the other part I wanted to talk about with paratransit is, again, my focus is a lot on the cost control piece, not just on the cost reimbursement side of things. And I say this because I previously worked for an organization that had lengthy discussions about island transit and the sales tax associated with it. And during the time period when it was going out for the levy, there was a lot of internal debate within the organization's board of directors about the value of paratransit. And so where people are very concerned about free fares on fixed rides, there's more community empathy for ensuring that those who are disabled have access to care. If that was my experience from some pretty intense discussions with folks who were pretty anti-fare free, but were wavering on that thought process because of paratransit. And so I think cost control is a place to really look. And then Jackie can speak to this better than I can, but it seems like if some of what we're doing is delivering or ensuring that people are making medical appointments, that there is Medicaid reimbursement lots of times for folks who get that type of transport. And if that's what Island Transit is doing, I would be interested to explore on whether or not there's a Medicaid reimbursement rate for folks who are income eligible, if it's a direct to a doctor's appointment or back, to a mental health provider or back. If those are the types of services that the paratransit is providing, it's hard for me to believe that we wouldn't be able to access some of the Medicaid reimbursement rates for that. However, the cost of billing that out and the recouping may not be worth it. And those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Hanna.
Yes, well, I just wanted to, and I'm going to make my pitch for fares just once more. Once we go to a fare system, not if, once we go to a fare system, if you look at the sheet, you're paying just on wages alone $20 a ride for every paratransit ride. You have 5,000, just under 5,000 rides last month, and it was almost $100,000 just in wages for paratransit. That's $20 a ride. That's what I want to see, this reimbursement. There's Medicaid, there's Opportunity Council, there's all kinds of places that could be you can look at to get some of these costs recovered. And we need to be looking into that. And if it requires that a fare be charged, once again, there's another incentive for us charging a fare. As it stands right now, financially, we're looking at we're going to have to make other cuts somewhere. So if we want to sustain ourselves, we need to look at bringing some more income in. And this is a good place to do it. This is bar none our most expensive program we do. Straight up. $20 a ride. 1949. That's just for wages. We're not looking at administrative costs and maintenance costs and everything else. That's just wages.
Is that it?
That's it for me.
Okay, Ms. Anderson.
I have a lot to say on this. First of all, I want to thank Dean and whoever else helped her put these suggestions together. I think they all need to be considered. Second of all, Dee and Ken and I'm not sure who else we are getting together, I believe on Monday to start talking about putting together, bringing together all of the social service agencies in the county who have some stake in this, or the people they work with have some stake in that. So we're going to be putting together that kind of forum or something. We haven't decided what we're going to call it, but we are getting together. I have already started talking with agencies about how they might help with some cost reimbursement, and people are coming up with some ideas. I'm also investigating the Medicaid. So far from what I've learned is it does have to be, we would have to be charging fares, but I'm working on that. And the other thing I just want to say is I don't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I understand that there are people that abuse the system, as there are people that abuse all systems. There are people that maybe have gotten to think it's an entitlement, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people that really need this service. And it would be very difficult for them just to be transported to a regular station. So I don't want us to do something very quickly that's going to hurt a number of people. But anyway, we really are working on this, so. And I'm excited about, I think, what we can probably come up with. I like the idea of, some vouchers for individuals, and I think some of the agencies might be able to afford some of those. I mean, the county, in my department, we might be able to help with some of that, so we really are working on that.
Two quick comments. First comment, A, that's why I want to be on the board. That's that reason right there. B,
B, you can point at me, but you
No,
can't.
B, I don't want to sound like the heartless cold
Yeah, I know,
Mr.
I know,
Scrooge here.
I know.
And I am empathetic for those that are truly in need. However, during our public meetings, I heard it time and time again from people who use the paratransit system, we would be willing to pay for this service. So if the people are willing to pay, let them pay. I've heard from a lot of people that ride the 411 and will be ever connector. We would be willing to pay for this service. Legislature's getting ready to go into special session. Our grant is still up in the air. However, that grant isn't contingent on us charging a fare. It can be an equitable fare, it can be a reasonable fare, but we need to charge a fare. That's it. Nobody rides for free.
Okay, and I just have a couple comments. We have to move along here. I really support this conditional review of eligibility. I think that is as important having an eligibility audit as it is auditing our funds here. And that includes the out-of-bounds areas and stuff like that. The other part is there may be a requirement why we have to use certain types of paratransit buses that we have. It just intuitively seems to me that the van pools that we have are quite adequate for transporting people. And I know there's some people who are wheelchair bound. I also have had friends who are wheelchair bound who actually access their own vehicle because they have accommodations, mechanical accommodations within the vehicle to do that. And so as we go through our review of fleet down the road, I would like to know if we can go to less expensive vehicles and cheaper to operate vehicles. And I would imagine a large portion of the paratransit service is for helping people who have difficulty getting around but not necessarily unable to get from a walker into a van, even with swivel seats and things like that. Obviously, you.
Yeah, their issue is getting to the stop. They would be able to get into just about any vehicle that we sent, knowing if they're ambulatory or not. If we know that they're ambulatory, yes, a van would work because they wouldn't need the lift.
And anyway, that's one of the areas I think that we have some control over that cost. And the other part is I always like to see the problem solvers be the people who have to deal with the problem, and that's staff. I would like to see the proposal come to the board that says, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this eligibility review. We're going to take a look at the fee system or the voucher system. If you come up with, when I say you, the transit staff comes up with the proposal, you take ownership to that proposal. Let us have a chance to hack away at it, but you know it better than we do. And you'll get it to us. We'll get to a solution faster when it comes from the staff. So, trying to tell me if my time's up?
Am I allowed to do that?
Really give them that look.
I was just going to follow on with what Rick just said, which might be something to consider is a user survey in terms of asking people who are using that what some of their solutions might be. And then we might be able to identify what the willingness to pay is, what the desire might be to meet at outbound people to meet inbound. Just to enable that level of participation also might make people feel better about the outcome of what's going to happen if they feel like they were part of solving the problem.
Well, I think too, along with that, when we meet with all of the social service agencies and medical people and stuff, I think if they're made really aware of some of the issues too, I think somebody mentioned about meeting with dialysis people to see what they can do to help things go smooth. My guess is they will have a lot of good ideas too, and some of them can switch and change some of maybe hours or whatever if people need to get to them for service. So I would expand that to those agencies too. Maybe that's something we can talk about on one day when we meet and do some kind of survey when we all get together.
I think the first step though, has to be a cost-benefit analysis of fares for the larger system. I can't think of paratransit preceding the larger system because they're supposed to be tied together. I mean, just in terms of calculating fares, for example. Is it true that the fares for paratransit cannot be more than twice
Yes.
the regular fare? So if we start with paratransit and pick a fare of $15 or something, that means the regular transit's charging $7.50. Well, I don't think that's where we're coming out. We have to go the other way around. So paratransit will never pay its way by itself. So going from the cost of paratransit in order to get fares for paratransit, probably the cheapest way for those people, if they have the money, is to get a taxi. I mean, the paratransit system is built on a shared responsibility and on a tax base. And we're very close right now, financially overall as an agency, to meeting our current system expenses with our current system income. That means if we do have a cost-benefit analysis, we will not necessarily be saying, what is the cost per ride overall? We'll be saying, what does it cost us and how much fare can we collect to make it cost benefit? So anyway, I think we have to start there.
Well, I know that there, as a matter of fact, I have costs of past, copies of past cost benefit analysis that we've done on Parkland Roads. It's few numbers about any way you want. Let's just look at last month. 88,000 regular riders, 5,000 paratransit riders. If you charge $2 a ride, that's $176,000. And then make it $4 a ride for paratransit, that's another $20,000. That's $196,000. I cannot see it costing $196,000 a month to collect fares. Somewhere along the line, we're gonna make money on it. And there's proven fact, there's proven numbers, statewide numbers, where a lot of agencies make anywhere from 20 to 40% on the dollar. So even if that's what we make, we're still coming out $20,000 ahead. You have to remember, we're losing funding at the end of June.
Yeah, I understand. My understanding is that charging fares has a pretty direct and immediate impact on the number of people riding. So
If you go in accordance with Skagit Transit's comparison, they say the riders they lost were the ones they didn't want on the bus anyway.
well,
I'm going to move this meeting along
well,
here.
it's just, it doesn't give you the income that you're talking about.
Mr. Albert, can I make one suggestion?
No, not as close to the floor right now. Public comment is closed. So we're going to move this along, kick back to our agenda. This is not the end of the conversation. Thank you very much for the presentation, and we look forward to continuing this in the very near future. We're on business item number 4, and that's the Parker Road project update. Can we do that quickly? We've already had the presentation before, and let's roll these along.
Very quickly, the workshop reported that we had about $240,000 left. We, Green Island Transit, about $240,000 left of state money to use on certain aspects of the Parker Road project. That right now is more or less extra funds that we could use for other purposes. There were assigned purposes for the use of those funds in 4 different line items. However, those line items are not currently pertinent to the current project because they were budgeted before the project got underway and are no longer really necessary, but still are funds available to us for the project. One thing I'm talking to the state about right now is possibly using those funds to add a couple pullouts on SR 20 out here near the facility those pullouts were not funded in the original project. I think because of time constraints and also because of funding at the time, but the state is pretty favorable on including those the bus pullouts now if we could fund it. That's not a sure bet, but I'm working on it with Todd Carlson to see if we can get those funds moved for that purpose. But if it's not for that purpose, they're available for possibly other things too associated with the project.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to public comments. Any public comments regarding this topic? You just got it in time, Mr. Montague. You may speak.
Just a question. You say the funds are available, and I'm pointing at you actually. I heard that funds are available. Are those funds included in our cash balance, or are they held in escrow somewhere in the state account?
Good question. We'll answer that question in just a minute here after public comment. Any other public comment? Yes.
I live down Parker Road between Parker and Morris, so accessibility has been really difficult in that spot, and I understand the highway is going to be widened, but a pullout I'd be super in favor of because, again, it's very difficult to access that area without traveling quite a distance. So I think it'd be a definite benefit to the public if those funds are available.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments?
I concur with
Very
both.
good. We're closing public comments right now. We're moving this one along. Can you answer that question, Paul, regarding?
Yes, I can. To the best of my knowledge, monies that we would get from Parker Road is being provided by the federal government. That's administered by the state that we have access to. So we've been designated to receive that money. So when we are awarded that money, it's still with the federal government. And when we spend the money that we're allowed to spend, we apply for a reimbursement. And they send that money via the state to us. So that money, we have to put the money up front, and then we get reimbursed.
This project's specific.
Yeah, it can only be for items that are specified in that grant contract. And if it isn't, then they won't reimburse us.
Does that answer your question, Mr.
Yes,
Montague?
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period. We'll go to the board. This time I'm going to start on the right side. Ms. Henderson, any comments?
Yeah, well, two questions. One is, if we were to do this project here with the pool lots, do we have to, we need to do a match?
No.
To get that 240,000?
100%.
That's 100%? Okay, so there's no match. And the other question I have is, if it is determined that we owe the feds that $130,000 and we spend this 240, all we would get reimbursed would be 110 then, correct?
I think that's true. We're still working on the negotiation around the audit findings, but if we're assessed that full amount, then that would be the case.
Okay. Are you finished? Okay. Ms. Johnson.
The amount of the original grant amount included the paving of Smith Prairie Road, or that would come out of the, is that the rate?
That would come out of this amount too, but supposedly it's fairly insignificant amount. It just requires paving from the back gate to Parker Road.
Right, so that would be
That'd be a
personally
part
my
of it.
first priority of how that would.
Right.
Second, I've had some, contrary to what we just heard today, I've had negative community feedback on the pullout, so I just want to put that out there that it may not be unanimous community support for that, and so we might need to do some outreach on that. My understanding of the audit findings is that it would be a reduction in our grant reimbursement if we have to pay something back, but we have anticipated we would have we have fuel savings right now that offset what we'll have to pay back, and so we would inherently be neutral. It just come from different funds. And then, more as a personal note, I have a phone call scheduled with Norma Smith Monday morning to talk about Parker Road. Does anybody want to give me a heads up on what I'm in for there, or you just let me go in blind? Guess I'll be telling you what I learned.
Is that all you have?
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, we'll go to, okay. And I do not have any comments either, so we're going to move on to agenda number 5, the audit findings, and that will be the interim executive director's comments. And again, I'm going to request that we move the speech along and the conversation shorter if we can. I'm pointing at you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to that discussion to Paul.
So last time we spoke about the audit findings, and we were using a figure of about $130,000 that is a potential liability payback item to the federal government for the SGR grant. And since that time, well, actually, we also knew that the FTA had contacted us and was requesting for us to put a report together so that they could examine and determine if that amount was correct and whether that would be the actual payback amount. So since that time, I went and I contacted the state auditors who had done that federal single audit, and they sent me the support of that number and the certainty around whether we would need to pay it back. And of course, that's their opinion, and they, during their audit, were in contact with the FTA, and our role is to report to the FTA so that they can go to the Office of Management and Business and settle the issue. So they gave me the detail in their opinion. Of course, we already saw their opinion in the report, but I spoke with them directly, and they feel fairly certain that we're going to have to pay that $131,000 back. So that's where we are. Of course, we'll still need to put our position out there to the FTA, and of course that isn't an absolute 131, but that's the auditor's opinion that we probably will need to reimburse them. So that's where we stand. The other thing I can put out there is we may not need to do a full federal single audit this upcoming year because we fall under the thresholds of reporting, but they will follow up on last year's findings. And there's potential savings there, I think around $7,000. So that's a positive note.
Okay, are you finished with your presentation? Okay, I'll turn this over to the public for their comments. Yes, please.
Shelley Bernke-Freeland. What you're telling me is we can pretty much consider the fact that we'll most likely pay back that $130, but it's also possible that a subsequent review of the information that we are now going to be giving to the FDA, that there may be additional monies fined.
No, I don't think.
Oh, wait, excuse me.
Sorry.
Hold the questions, we'll get the other comments, and we'll answer all the questions at one time.
Yeah, it's just that I want to, when I leave here, I want to get the feeling that either we are comfortable thinking that it's not going to exceed $130,000, or that there is a potential for a bigger fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, and we will go to the board again, and let's answer the question.
I guess at this point, I kind of feel like the auditors were pretty thorough in their investigation. That the information that we released to yourself via public disclosure was the same information that the auditors were looking at. There's always a possibility that if we're subject to a wider audit of some sort of review of some sort, they could come up with a different result, but I feel like the state auditors were pretty thorough, and they tested items, and they also stated that there would be other projected items that they didn't test, but that's included in the $130,000 amount. So I put a lot of confidence in what they did, but I can't absolutely say that another review, a more detailed review, would come with a different result. It might.
Could it be less?
It could be less too.
Okay, Are you finished? Does that answer your question?
More or less, yes. We don't know until.
We don't know for sure.
Until there's a
Yeah,
general.
yeah, there's, you know, the auditors always have that hedge until they get to the very end and actually issue a written report. That's been my experience. But what I've read so far is there's a pretty high probability that where that amount, that 131 that I saw for the things that were not qualified represents the non-compliance of the use of those funds. And I've already closed the public comment. So we're up here on the board, so I'm going to the left. Mr. Norton, any comment? Mr. Sumner?
I already jumped in.
Yeah, okay. Jill, thank you very much.
You'll just leave the smart thing unsaid. Can you speak to the budget impact of that and how you anticipate this being paid back without the budget, without negatively impacting the budget?
Well, after reviewing the first 3 months, we didn't write in a fuel savings into our budget, so we're realizing that in the first 3 months, and I think it's been significant. It's been about $135,000 in fuel dollar savings. So that's a really positive thing. We also didn't write in these expenses into the budget. 131,000, that's a negative impact, but kind of feel, in the balance that we're going to be okay. So we didn't really know that at the beginning of the year because we didn't know about our fuel savings. But now we do, and I think we can pay that money back and stay on track in our budget.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, move on. Mr. Hamlin.
Yes, so there is a possibility that, well, no, you're pretty sure we're gonna have to pay that back. But we've actually saved 130,000, so this would be a negative impact on the budget. All right, so that's in 3 months' time.
Saved it already, and
Yeah,
there's
we've
likely
already-
savings in the next 3 months and the next 3 months.
That's cool, okay. That's all I got.
Okay. Then I have a couple of comments here. In that 131,000 includes the 2 gazebos and the tractors, is that correct? And then the others are consumables like tires and whatever. I would be all for surplusing and shedding both the gazebos and the tractor, and I would turn to Mr. Norton and say, Mr. Norton, would the union like to buy 2 gazebos during your we're going to give you a deal you can't refuse.
I'll have to check with the union president. She may like one.
You accept checks, right?
Clear.
Yeah, I did read a little review on this earlier, and the gazebos, there's 2 of them, there's actually 3. 2 of them are non-compliant, 1 is compliant on the purchase. We're going to get rid of them, I'm sure. I'm hoping that we do. We can advertise them for wineries around here, people who do wedding sets and stuff like that, or put it out on Craigslist. And the tractor